What is going on, Pirate Nation, or others who may be tuned in? You're watching the Jungle Tales podcast as we're talking East Carolina Pirate baseball for the next 45 minutes or so. Very excited on this episode 7 of the program, to be joined by D1Baseball's Aaron Fitt, who had the opportunity to see Cliff Godwin's ball club multiple times this fall. Aaron, welcome in.
Great to be with you, my friend. And I tell you what, that's a banging intro. I love that. That's good stuff right there.
I appreciate it. And very fortunate in East Carolina to have, one of the better atmospheres in college baseball, and definitely appreciate the kind words and your time during this busy part of the year, right here just 5 days from Christmas. But as I mentioned, you had the chance to see Cliff Godwin's ball club multiple times this fall, just being a short drive up the road from the Triangle area. And needless to say, plenty of turnover, and I guess it's a common theme in collegiate athletics in this day and age. Cliff Godwin, Jeff Palumbo and company welcoming 31 new players into the program, also a new strength coach, new director of operations, new academic coordinator, and a new athletic trainer. And that was one of the common themes throughout the fall. So just as you take a look at this program entering year 11 under Cliff Godwin, what's your general overview? Because I know you just recently put out your fall report on D1Baseball.
Yeah, it's you're right. I mean, there's a lot of newness here, but this program, they just do such a great job year after year, I think, reloading and developing talent. And so it does feel like this year in particular, I mean, we've gotten kind of used to seeing some of these guys around the program for a while. I mean, how many years did Jacob Starling? I feel like he was there for 7 years, that guy, just doing something. I mean, some of these older players that were just kind of mainstays, Barini and, all these guys that are gone now, Wilcox, and I mean, really up the middle, it's a new group. For the most part, you still have Riley Johnson center field, but and so that's a key thing. Obviously on the mound, I mean, four big pieces are gone. And so, you look at that and a lot of programs, you'd say, well, all right, this could be just kind of a rebuilding year or transition year, but I just don't think that's going to be the case, at East Carolina. I mean, sure, there's some guys that need to establish themselves, but the talent level remains really strong. I love the pieces they brought in on the mound, especially. I mean, they're athletic in the lineup, and they're going to be fine there. But I do think the strength of this team will probably be its pitching staff, which, they thought heading to last year that could be the best staff that they've had, in a decade under Cliff Godwin's leadership there. And I think, if it was really until they got those injuries late in the year with Lunsford, Shankman and Root going down. I mean, 2 of your top 4 guys, but even without those guys, they were competitive on the mound. But I think this year's staff has a chance to be even deeper than last year's. It just maybe, doesn't have the proven frontline guys. There's no Trey Savage at the front. There's no Gavin Williams or Jake Agnos, but I think the freshman Sean Jenkins, he's the next guy in that kind of lineage for East Carolina. Those true, frontline Friday night blue chip guys that will probably, in my opinion, leave East Carolina as a first round pick, in a few years now. He enrolled early and he's young for the class, but boy, it's polished, it's physical. I mean, these are things that are uncommon for a guy his age. His field to command the zone, his durability and with real stuff too. I mean, it's mid-90s fastball and can really spin the slider and the curveball, and he's got a split as well, like we've seen from Savage and a lot of Pirate pitchers in recent years. It feels like that's something they've done pretty well under Austin Knight is kind of developed that split finger. So I think he's really a huge key to this thing for sure, because it's a lot to ask a true freshman, especially a young freshman, to step right in and be a Friday night ace at a major program. I mean, it happens from time to time. We saw last year, North Carolina made it to Omaha with a true freshman as their Friday guy by the end of the year. He didn't start out from day one as a Friday guy, but Jason DeCaro as we got into May and June, and he was the guy. And I think Jenkins, like DeCaro, Jenkins, early enrollee, is that good. I think he can be a legit Friday guy for an Omaha caliber team.
Yeah, as you hone in on Sean Jenkins, I mean, 17 years old, out of Fred T. Ford High School in Hickory, and the things that you kept hearing about him, throughout the fall and interviews that Cliff Godwin did, with the local radio stations, maturity, work ethic, just his mound presence. That's something that I heard a lot from Mike Mullis, the color analyst on ESPN Plus, and clearly has the stuff. And Cliff Godwin made no bones about it. He said, this is a guy, if he does not reclass, that he would not have made it to campus the following year.
Yeah, exactly. It's I think it's the first guy that Cliff was saying that they've had during his tenure at ECU that's enrolled early. And so, you got to be a pretty mature, special kid to be able to do that and to handle yourself against older competition, especially as old as college baseball is nowadays, with a lot of, you see a lot of 5th-year guys and even some 6th-year guys still running around, as we kind of finish shaking out from the pandemic after effects. But it's really an older man's game in a lot of ways. I mean, because of the transfer portal, especially, I mean, a lot of these teams are able to just reload with old players. And so, if you're enrolling early, you're probably pretty special. And again, we see that from time to time, but it's the first one they've had at ECU under Cliff. And, he's going to be fun to watch. I think he's going to be a really good one.
And before we transition from Sean Jenkins, probably, or perhaps the greatest compliment that Cliff Godwin could give him at this point of his career before he's ever thrown a pitch in the purple and gold, is that he said that his mentality was as good as that of Trey Savage as a junior, which is just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty loud. How much, how highly that coaching staff regards Trey Savage and his work ethic made him who he is. So that's pretty exciting. I think Cliff said he was voted the hardest working pitcher on the staff, as a 17-year-old kid. So that's pretty loud.
Moving on from Sean Jenkins, the Pirates brought in, several pitchers from the transfer portal. Let's talk a little about Ryan Towers, very talented lefty out of Loyola Marymount. Coach talked about his slow heartbeat, how the moment wasn't too big for him. Pitched minimal innings this fall because he needed to be shut down due to a knee issue to make sure he was ready for the spring. But that he developed a changeup under the tutelage of Austin Knight that made left-handers look stupid.
Yeah, it's a guy that made 13 starts last year for a good program out there at LMU. Was pretty effective, and it sounds like, because of the improvements in his secondary stuff, and as in particular, you mentioned the changeup, I think they're expecting him to make another jump. And, he had a, ERA just under 5 last year. I think he could be better than that now with the work that he's done with Austin Knight. And it's enough fastball. It's 88, 92, plays up a little bit. And it sounds like he can throw any of his 3 pitches, in any count. I didn't get to see him at the end of the fall. He was shut down when I was in Greenville, but he's a guy that has some track record, and it feels like he's continuing to improve. So that's a guy that I think, especially if you're looking to ease in your 17-year-old freshman, maybe you start a guy like Towers, on Friday nights early, just to kind of start the year with a veteran guy to set the tone for you at the top. Somebody that has experience, as a starter at the Division I level. Wouldn't surprise me if maybe, in February, he's the guy that kind of leads the way for that staff. And then maybe at some point Jenkins takes over that role, or maybe not. Maybe Towers runs with it.
One of the things that stood out to me about Towers, like you said, some inconsistencies there. But some of his better outings there in March or April came against some of LMU's top opponents on teams that were in regionals. So that was encouraging.
Yeah, that's you always like to see that, guys that elevate their game, and they played a good schedule out there. And so, he was, I think, a kind of a rock for them all year long in the rotation. So, a guy that gives you a little bit of peace of mind bringing him in as a transfer piece.
Another transfer from the middle part of the country was Brad Pruitt. Brad Pruitt originally out of Texas, but pitched for the Oklahoma Sooners. Pitched minimally, but very good stuff, and he pitched very well this summer up in the New England Collegiate Baseball League as a teammate of Dixon Williams with the Newport Gulls.
Yeah, and that guy that I know they're really high on, and I ran into him, I believe, up in the NECBL, and it was a pretty good look. It's kind of a power righty that has some pitchability, can run that fastball up into the mid 90s with some carry on it. slider is an out pitch, a swing and miss offering for him. And he's, again, the guy's got a splitter. We like those ECU guys with the splitters. It sounds like that is another weapon for him too. So, three pitch guy that I think is still on the rise, so to speak. A guy that needs to kind of establish himself, but has a chance. I think to be a maybe a midweek starter, maybe a key bullpen arm. And maybe winds up in the weekend rotation. I mean, there's some pieces here that are still to be determined, but I think he will be an important piece of the staff one way or another.
I mentioned how Pruitt was originally from Texas, a guy that's coming to East Carolina from the state of Texas, College Station, originally from the state of Pennsylvania, someone that East Carolina had a relationship with when they recruited him and offered him out of high school, was Brett Antolik. And he's someone that was shut down in the fall due to hip surgery, but Coach talked a lot about the slider and cutter that he presents, and definitely has the stuff and brings an awful lot of good things to the table.
Yeah, physical kid, power arm guy. I like power sinkers, especially nowadays where, it felt like for a while everyone was kind of chasing that ride fastball up in the zone, and the hitters kind of adjusted to that and learned to elevate that pitch. And I think as much as the ball is flying out in college baseball nowadays, I like a guy that can get a lot of ground balls with that power sinker. That's what he's got. He's 92, 95 with that arm side run, that sink on it. He's got a good cutter, that he can run into the low 90s, kind of a power cutter for him, short, tight pitch. He'd give you that bigger sweeper as you talked about. And again, it sounds like he's got a splitter as well, though I haven't seen that. But, that's kind of an intriguing 4-pitch arsenal right there. A guy that I didn't get to see in the fall, would really like to, because he sounds really intriguing to me. Again, could be a key piece of the staff. He could wind up being the Friday guy on the staff. He's got Friday night stuff and physicality. It's just a matter of the track record is not there yet. He only pitched less than 5 innings last year as a freshman for A&M on a loaded Omaha team. And so, once he gets healthy, and probably won't be quite at the beginning of the season, it sounds like, they can kind of ease him along, and maybe, about a quarter of the way into the season, they're hoping that he can kind of hit the ground running as they kind of bring him back from that hip injury. So, give you a little bit of a boost. I think as we get into the season, it'll be a nice little pickup, kind of like Jake Hunter, coming off injury. Those two guys are going to come back and get healthy and really give that pitching staff a jolt.
Another 4-year transfer, this more of the Ryan Towers variety in terms of substantial innings at his previous stop, and that is Liberty's Nick Moran. Scott Jackson obviously made that decision to go to North Carolina once again, but Nick Moran opting to enter the transfer portal and wound up an East Carolina Pirate, and he pitched very well against the Pirates last year before ECU was able to get to him in the middle innings.
Yeah, this guy's good, man. I like this guy. I've seen him before at Liberty. He's a real competitor. Bulldog dude that has experience. Again, has been a starter, a weekend starter for a good program. I think he had 14 starts last year. Innings eater, really physical. I think I said it's 6'3", 230. I mean, he's a horse. And I think that fastball plays up a little bit. I mean, I saw it 87, 88 in the fall, but with good run on it, to the arm side. And I like the cutter a lot, kind of a short 82, 83 with some bite to it. He's got a bigger breaking ball that he can flip in there as well to keep hitters off balance. So I like that package where those pitches tunnel off each other. I think he's got a change up as well. Fills up the strike zone and really attacks. And so for me, I would expect this guy to be a starter for this team. I think probably out of all these guys we've talked about, I mean, he might be the safest bet. Even Towers, I guess he's probably right there with Towers, those two lefties that have experience, solid stuff across the board. And I just feel like you can count on those two guys while you kind of break some of these other guys in. And, I mean, a guy like Antolik is as exciting as he is, a little bit more of a wild card. He really hasn't done it. He doesn't have the track record that Moran and Towers have. So I feel like those are going to be pillars of this pitching staff.
A guy that is proven, exactly what you're getting. Someone that was not heavily recruited, his brother, Connor Norby, now of the Miami Marlins. Obviously, you had that established relationship there, and Connor, and also Trey Daly with the Dirtbags. Really encouraged AK and then Cliff Godwin to take a look at Ethan Norby, and they're certainly glad they did. He pitched very well last year as a freshman.
Yeah, he's good too. And this is another guy that, you could deploy him in any role that you needed. I mean, we saw him start last year, about half of his appearances, I think he started, and down the stretch, I believe certainly he showed that he could do that. But it sounded like Cliff Godwin really likes him at the back end. They always love to have that key piece of the back, like a lot of programs. But I feel like especially at East Carolina, they've had a lot of success building their staffs from the back forward. Especially in years where they don't necessarily have the proven number one dude at the front. If you don't have a Savage or Gavin Williams or whatever, a couple years ago they had a really good team. They barely even had a rotation. And it was just a lot of bullpen stuff, and just kind of building it from the back forward. And so, this guy gives you peace of mind because he can really pitch. He's that 4-pitch guy, 89, 91 with command and real ride on it, that kind of uphill action to it, some crossfire stuff going on with his delivery, gives you some deception. I like the sweeper a lot. It's tight. It's got serious tilt to it. It's a good little cutter in there and a changeup as well. So, 4-pitch guy from the left side with feel, who's durable, who has bloodlines, who has experience. Last year he was very good as a freshman. There's a lot to like. He kind of checks really all the boxes as a guy that you can build your staff around, and whatever role you want to use him in. I like him as that stopper guy. I think that's what Cliff likes him as too. Not necessarily just your traditional, ninth inning closer. He could come in a moment of truth in the 6th inning and maybe finish a game, or he could, get 3 outs in the 6th and 3 more in the 7th, and then come back, 2 days later on Sunday to finish the series. Whatever it is, I think the arm bounces back well, and he'll be one of the most important guys on the staff, no question about it.
Yeah, that's something Connor was laughing about. He said he was talking to Coach Godwin, and that hey, if he was his brother, that he would certainly want to be in that role where you get a pitch more frequently as opposed to once a week.
Yeah.
But taking a look at some of these other arms, you have a JUCO transfer, a guy that can run it up there in the mid 90s, much like Sean Jenkins, and he played at Catawba Valley Community College in Hickory, and that is Ethan Young.
Yeah, good arm, and it's he was really good the day I saw him this fall. Looked like a pretty clean delivery to me. Good body, up to 95, and I saw a pretty good slider that day too. I mean, Cliff said he'd like to see that slider, I think, be a little bit more consistent, tighten it up even a little more. But the day I was in there, it was pretty good. It was sharp, missed some bats. Just a matter of this guy of being a little bit more efficient, I think, with his command. Working a few more clean innings and not issuing those free bases. But yeah, I mean, it's a guy that if that clicks, you're looking at another back end type arm, a guy that maybe he'll be a kind of a key setup guy for Norby. I think that might be how that winds up playing out.
Some other names they're new to the program, pretty much all freshmen here that I'll throw at you: Lance Williams, Ian White Jr., Tyler Brashear, to name a few. Tell us a little of what you saw of them in the fall, or others that I may not have mentioned.
Yeah. Lance Williams is probably the one I'm most excited about in that group. It's a real high upside guy. It's loose, and 91, 94 with projection. He's going to throw harder, before it's all said and done. I think he's he's now well removed from Tommy John surgery, but he's still, working his way back. He took a gap year between high school and college while he recovered from surgery. And that arm works. It can spin the curveball. It's pretty tight. I think Cliff said this guy could wind up throwing high 90s. By the time we get to the spring, I could see it. It's that kind of a talent, the way that arm works. So he's exciting. Ian White is more of that kind of undersized bulldog guy that just competes his tail off and fills it up, and fastball plays above his velocity a little bit with some riding life. He's not going to blow you away. It'll be 86, 88, something like that. But I saw a really good change up there too. That's deceptive and got some good sink to it. Bradley's Zayak, I believe. Physical righty, low 90s fastball, got some life to it again. Up to 93. I mean, that's a nice group of freshman arms, and Bashir more for that kind of longer term projection guy. I wouldn't necessarily count on him as much right away, but down the road, he's got some upside. So, they got those guys. They got some other kind of guys who redshirted last year or pitched limited innings like a Michael Irby or Jackson DeLorenzo. They're high on those guys as well. And Irby in particular, I think, has really taken a jump after redshirting last spring. He's kind of that pick to click guy that, run up to 93 with sinker, slider look to it. Got a little bit of feel for a changeup as well, and he's throwing strikes. So that's a guy that I would say could be a breakout candidate now as second year in the program.
Shifting over positionally, you talk about some of those guys in our open several minutes ago, just Carter Cunningham, Ryan McChrystal, J-Dub, Justin Wilcoxon, Jacob Jenkins Coward, Jacob Starling, Joey Barini that ECU lost positionally. You have a guy back like Riley Johnson, who Cliff Godwin says is the best center fielder he's ever been around, not only at East Carolina, but at all his other stops. And, he's been the likes of LSU, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, etc.
Yeah, it's high praise. That's high praise. And, he's always liked Riley Johnson. Every year it feels like he's kind of talked him up, and it's just been a matter of staying healthy. He's had a hard time staying on the field at times. Last year was his first year where even last year wasn't fully healthy. He played through the shoulder stuff and put together a nice year, and I think he's hopefully going to have his best year yet because he's been able to, have that the procedures to repair both of his shoulders after the season. So I would think he'll be what makes him so good is that he's just such an aggressive player, and if you're playing hurt, it makes it just a little bit harder to go all the way all out. And it's amazing that he was as good a defensive player as he was, even with that going on. But if he's back to 100% with those shoulders and everything, I mean, you're going to see him playing with reckless abandon in the outfield and on the base paths. He's a dynamic table setter guy. He's short, but he's strong. He's a kind of a tank who's athletic and runs and drives the ball more than you think too. So I like him a lot. I think he's a really fun player, and he's primed to have his best year yet.
Another guy, Dixon Williams,
a little bit of technical difficulties here.
Yeah, I can look around. But if you really talk a little about Dixon Williams.
Why don't I stall while Bubba figures out his audio over there? Are you back, Bubba? Yeah. So, I mean, I think you're probably going to ask me next about Dixon Williams. I'll go ahead and start talking about him because, this is the guy, Dixon Williams, that had the huge summer. He was another like Riley Johnson. He's the returning guy who was really good for him last year. I just think he's a baseball player. He kind of fills it up. Everything you're looking for across the board. He can hit for average. He's got some power. That power continues to emerge. He's a solid runner. He could defend anywhere you want to put him, really anywhere on the field except for catcher. Probably he could play. And he runs, like I say, runs some. The arm's okay. It's just really good at bats, really mature at bats. He's going to be one of those guys like Riley Johnson that makes him go. And given what he did last summer, I mean, just insane, tearing up the NECBL, best player in that league by far. I would expect this guy has a chance to make that next jump from being a really good player to being an All-American type player now in his third year in the program.
Yeah, I found it pretty interesting, here in the last couple of days where you had the All AAC preseason team released, and Dixon Williams was not on it. And you guys had released your fall report, thinking that he's going to certainly be a candidate for the Player of the Year in the league. I
did not realize that they released that, and he wasn't on that team. That's wild to me. I think he's easily one of the best players in the league. If I had to looking at the list here now, yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer for me. He's got to be on that list. I'm shocked by that, but maybe might partly because nobody knows where exactly he's going to play. We think he's going to play second base, but he played third last year, and Gavin Schultz of Tulane is a really good player. It makes sense to have him on there, but yeah, I mean Dixon Williams is he's a stud, and if I had to bet on somebody today to win Player of the Year in this league, it'd probably be him.
Moving on to another returnee, and that is Colby Wallace. Colby had a very good summer, and he's a guy that has put on 10 or 15 pounds, improved his diet. Coach Godwin was kind of laughing, saying that some of his teammates perhaps ratted him out, saying he ate a little too much fast food, and said he improved his diet and committed himself in the weight room even more than what he already had, and put on those additional 10 or 15 pounds. He's a guy that's 6'2" and well over 200 pounds.
Yeah, he looks at part. I mean, he kind of jumps off the field. I thought so anyway this fall. I mean, he immediately caught my eye. He looks great in the box. He's got serious strength, 6'4" and just powerful. And I think he's a guy that's going to hit you double-digit home runs, and I think he can hit for average too. I think he's really improved his approach. It sounds like he could also pitch for him. Now we'll see how that works. I mean, East Carolina has shown they're not afraid to let guys go both ways. I mean, certainly Zach Agnos is a guy that did that very effectively, played the infield and also was kind of a key back end piece. And maybe that'll be Colby Wallace as well. He's probably not, I'm guessing, not as advanced as Agnos was on the mound at the same stage, but we'll see how that goes. It's 993. It's a good arm, with a feel for a slider. So he's going to be one of the most important players on this roster. I think they're counting on him to be a middle of the order run producer in particular, whether he plays third base, first base. I would expect to be at one of those two spots every day.
Last year, ECU had the luxury of having two quality catchers in Ryan McChrystal and starter, or both started, but Justin Wilcoxon was more the everyday guy there for the bulk of his time with the Pirates. And J-Dub hit 14 bombs. Ryan McChrystal hit 7 or 8 and had a very hot bat at the end of last season, particularly in that Greenville Regional. So you have Walker Barron, and then you also have Boston College transfer John Collins. So what did you see behind the plate this fall?
Yeah, I think Barron's the guy. I would expect, they like to mix it up a little bit and keep your catchers fresh. So I think John Collins will get some action there, and the freshman Michael Kalinich, who I think is going to hit also. I really like that bat in particular. Collins, has power. That's probably his best tool. But Barron is, I think, the best defender of the bunch. And so I think he's going to get a lot of run back there. And we'll see about his bat. They were kind of pleasantly surprised last spring in the limited action that he got by how well he hit. It sounded like he didn't have a great fall offensively this year, but the key is he's just got to play good defense. That's whatever I think they get out of him offensively feels like a bonus, but he's got some strength. He's got a chance to hit. But the number one, first and foremost, is handle that pitching staff, receive and block, and do a decent job keeping the running game in check, and all those things. I think that's what they need from him after losing a veteran catcher like Wilcoxon. He just need that guy back there to give you stability and run the show.
Yeah, Cliff Godwin emphasized that Walker Barron was recruited for his defense, but as you mentioned, his bat was better than his defense a year ago. So that defense was a point of emphasis this fall with the continued production on the offensive side. John Collins, he was a guy that had performed very well at the Division III level, then kind of a mixed bag at Boston College. But Cliff Godwin said that he entered the program with an excellent attitude and really was a leader from just about a month or so into the program back in September. And just that he was a guy that really stressed to the guys within the program that were new, how fortunate they had it in East Carolina relative to the other places he had been as far as the quality of coaching and development.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, that's something I've heard coaches talk a lot about in the last couple of years in this portal era, is we're seeing more and more players make that jump from Division II or Division III to big time college baseball. It is some of these guys that come from smaller programs bring a valuable perspective, that kind of the gratitude, as Chris Pollard has said, from Duke, because they've done very well with their Division III guys. Those guys come in there with gratitude, and that's contagious, and it makes everyone appreciate what they've got and how good of a situation that they're in. And so, I think that's a really nice piece for your clubhouse chemistry.
I'm gonna throw some other names at you here from just going around the infield. Guys like Braxton Trammell, Austin Irby, Alex Boucher, the Old Dominion transfer, Roger Vergara, a junior college transfer out of St. John's River State. What can you tell us about some of those guys?
That's a good group, and I think competition for roles will be ongoing. I expect Boucher, be the one guy that you can probably count on to be the shortstop. He was a shortstop for ODU 2 years ago. He's kind of a thicker framed guy, moved to first base last year for Old Dominion, but he handles himself okay at short. I don't think it's premier range, but the arm really works, and if he gets the balls in the hole, he's got a chance to make the play. And so, maybe a key might be to cheat a little bit and position him the right way so that he can be in position to make a play. Because I don't think he's the most rangy guy, but he can really throw, and hands work. So he's got some pop. He hit for some power as a freshman in particular. I think he had 11 home runs there for Old Dominion. So that's a guy that I think you'll see along with Dixon Williams and probably in Colby Wallace in lineup most days. And so that's probably 3/4 of your infield in some configuration. And so then it's just a matter of, if Williams is at second base, who plays third? Is it Trammell? Is it Wallace? It seems like they really like Trammell. He's a true freshman, switch hitter, compact, powerful. They think he's got a chance to be a middle of the order bat for him. And seems like he's done a solid enough job defending as a young guy. So that's a nice piece. I think Roger Vergara, he's got bat speed. He hit a home run when I was in there. It's kind of a, athletic looking frame, just a matter of adjusting to the level of pitching that he's seeing. I guess that's been something that was kind of uneven in the fall. And so I don't know how much you can necessarily count on him right away, but interesting guy, a guy that could wind up growing into an important role either now or down the road. And then, you mentioned Austin Irby. That's another guy that I'm actually quite high on. Really like the bat. Feels like one of those hit first guys. I think there's going to be power there too, but it's just a sweet stroke from the left side. I think he can drive the ball to the opposite gap. He can pull a little bit, but yeah, I think he's going to be like a guy hits a lot of doubles, can hit for some average, and maybe grows into some power. So, younger brother of Michael Irby. I think both Irbys are going to be, they're not going to be the Agnosis, but they're going to be. This program has a long history of doing pretty well with pairs of brothers, and these two guys, I think, are both going to be nice contributors at over their careers at East Carolina.
Not to deviate from the position theme, but since you brought up Michael Irby and his presence on this Pirate roster, that's one thing Cliff Godwin said, that he was the most improved arm this fall. So that's something for Pirate fans to consider. Is he may earn some innings this spring, especially in the midweek. But shifting to the outfield, we already discussed Riley Johnson. Tell us, some of the other guys that you saw good things from this fall.
Yeah, and I think after Riley, it's fairly wide open for roles. I think the competition's ongoing. I would guess probably Keenan Bowman would be a favorite for one of those spots. Just this is a team that might be able to manufacture some offense with some athleticism, with some speed in the outfield in particular. And Bowman fits that mold. He's a battler, in the box. He's going to put the ball in play and, put the ball on the ground and put his speed to work. There's a little bit of right hand pop in there too, but I think he can defend pretty well no matter where you put him in the outfield. So that'd be a guy that I would probably expect to win one of those jobs, probably left field. But he'll be in a battle. I mean, between the freshman Alex Peltier and Drew Downs and David Lillis, all those guys are really nice pieces to build around. Davin Whitaker, I kind of got a little bit of a Carter Cunningham vibe from Davin Whitaker, that longer, loose kind of frame, got some arm strength. I think he's going to have some pop, left-handed hitter, interesting guy. we'll see, how he kind of develops. It was a little bit uneven in the fall as well, but wouldn't shock me if he winds up winning a job in right field. He looks apart to me, but so does Lillis. I think Lillis is really interesting. Um, missed some time this fall, but he's athletic. He's got strength, power, potential. Um, so and then Downs and Peltier more of those kind of speed oriented players. And so you've got a nice blend of skill sets out there, some righties and some lefties, and maybe you can see some platooning. I mean, East Carolina has shown under Cliff Godwin they're not afraid to play some of those platoons in certain spots, and I think this group of outfielders, besides Riley Johnson being not as proven, maybe that's the way they start the year is kind of some lefty righty matchup stuff.
Yeah, Davin Whitaker had a very good summer for the Bethesda Big Train in the Cal Ripken League, and he's definitely a name to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And kind of shifting to college baseball at large, and this is a question that I had from Justin Butts on YouTube a few minutes ago. He was talking about the Diego Pavia court case and the JUCO ruling. What are your thoughts there as far as the impact that will have on the college baseball game?
Yeah, it's a fascinating one right there. I mean, it sounds like if this, we'll see how it plays out. I think there's still a long way to go with the appeals and the courts processes and all that stuff. But there's a chance that players could wind up getting basically 6 years of eligibility. 2 years in JUCO, followed by 4 years in the NCAA, and so. That would be big. That would be a major shift to the paradigm of college baseball, especially with the draft, right? Because now if players want to really maximize their leverage, if this goes through, you might see a lot more players choosing the JUCO route, knowing that they can get a chance to be drafted every year after their freshman year, after their sophomore year, and then maybe I go play in the SEC and get drafted again as a junior. You're still only 21 years old, but you've got leverage each year in the draft, and so. I don't know how that's going to play out at this point. I tend to be skeptical about a lot of this stuff, but I mean, we're in an age of transition, and I was skeptical about some of the NIL stuff before it happened, and then it happened, and I was skeptical about the 34 scholarship thing that they're talking about. It sounds like that's going to happen, and so at this point, I'm not ruling anything out. It feels like all bets are off in college athletics right now.
Another big picture topic that's been of much discussion. I know you guys have discussed it on multiple shows on the D1Baseball podcast, and that is the 34 scholarships that you've heard. It's been 11.7 for forever and ever, and with a lot of controversy, and rightfully so. What are you hearing now as far as the scholarships and roster limit? And that's a thing that East Carolina, although it's not a quote P4 program, a big time baseball program for years, and so much support that East Carolina would certainly be more than 11.7.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll see how that works from conference to conference. If the conferences set the guidelines, or if the individual schools are able to kind of do what they want to do, I think we're still trying to figure that out. But right now, the plan is, it sounds like, starting next year, you're going to have a 34-man roster cap, and you'll have the ability, I mean, depending on, again, what the conferences decree, and we'll find out. I mean, if that's something that the schools can make their own way on that, but you have the ability theoretically, to give 34 full scholarships if you want to fund it all the way. And so, I suspect obviously the SEC is probably going to lead the way on that. There'll be some ACC programs that go all the way with their funding, and some of these top programs in the non P4 conferences, if you will, like East Carolina, I would think, Southern Miss, those kinds of programs that have a really rich tradition and are really devoted to their baseball programs, I think will invest heavily and take advantage of having those added scholarships at their disposal. And, really, I think this gives a chance to further separate the programs that really care about college baseball from everybody else, the ones that you can be as invested as you want to be, and so it's gonna widen the gap a little bit, but East Carolina will be on the right side of that gap. There's no question about it. I mean, baseball is too important to this program.
A couple more things for you, Aaron. We really appreciate the time. As you take a look at the American Athletic Conference, the preseason poll was released here in the last couple days. East Carolina picked to win the league for what would be a sixth straight regular season title. Wichita State, you had a ton of improvement last year, under that new staff. Going into year 2 now, they expect the Shockers to make that jump to contend for the league title. And then also you know you're going to get a challenge out of Tulane and UTSA.
Yeah, and even Charlotte, I would think will probably bounce back. I thought they were, they had a bad year last year, but I like some of the pieces that they brought in. I saw them in the fall. They did a nice job overhauling that roster, so they could be a factor. UTSA has kind of quietly had it rolling lately. Been a regional caliber program in recent years, last couple of years. And so I like the trajectory that they're on. Tulane has, managed to win the automatic bid 2 years in a row, and one of those years they were really not very good and they just got hot at the right time. But, that's a skill, right? Winning when it matters most. But yeah, I think you're right about Wichita State in the direction that they're headed in under Brian Green. I mean, that guy's a great coach, and he has been. I remember way back, 15 years ago, Gary Henderson had him and Brad Bohannon on his staff at Kentucky, and a couple of future head coaches, and he was like, "Hey, this guy Green, like he's going to be a stud," and he went to UCLA and had success there as an assistant coach under John Savage. So really established recruiter, was a good head coach at New Mexico State and Washington State, and now he's at Wichita. And it's a program that has a lot of history and tradition as well, that has not had as much success in the last 15 years, but they've got a national championship, Wichita State, and it's not ancient history. It was in the late 80s. So, or 1990 rather. So anyway, they're not they're a program that if you've ever been to Wichita, it's a neat facility. When they're good, it's a good fan base. I've always thought that potentially if they could get the right coaching staff in there and really build that thing back up, that could be the kind of program that could challenge East Carolina and their grip in this league. But this is a good baseball league now with the programs in here. Florida Atlantic has history. South Florida was in a super regional a few years ago. They've got a nice little setup there with their facilities. And then Rice, you see at the bottom of the list here for Pete's sake, and we all know about Rice. It's wild that they've gotten as bad as they are, considering the history of that program. And again, not ancient history. They were in Omaha a bunch of times under Wayne Graham in the earlier part of this century, and have won it all in 2003. And so you got to feel at some point they're going to come back. I don't know that it's going to happen under Jose Cruz, but you never know. And so, yeah, it's a fascinating league. I would agree. I would think Wichita is probably the biggest challenger to East Carolina this year, but not surprised to see the Pirates at the top of that preseason poll.
Yeah, very intrigued to see how Mitch Hannahs does in year 1 down at South Florida. And then, as you mentioned, it's just mind-boggling to me how a program that was so dominant like Rice, that was pretty much getting to Omaha or a threat to go to Omaha on an annual basis, just fell off a cliff. And it's been that way for several years now.
Yeah, it's sad, really, because I think that was one of the neat. It's kind of like Cal State Fullerton. Some of these programs that didn't really have success in other major sports had kind of carved out this neat little niche in baseball. It's one of the things that I think gave our sports some character. And as the big money interests in the SEC and ACC kind of bully out a lot of the other programs that don't have as many resources, we're maybe losing a little bit of the charm of our sport, but it's a trade-off. All in all, obviously the sport is growing, and there's a lot more resources available. We talked about the scholarships and the facilities money that's being spent and the NIL stuff. We got a lot more talent in the game than we used to have. We've got more exposure than ever. And so, it feels like maybe some of those old school programs that had built something up out of nothing are just becoming a little bit of a relic of the past. And I'll be curious to see if those kind of programs, those old powers, the USCs and the Fullertons and the Rices, if they can kind of find their way again in the modern era, or if their time has just passed. So we'll see.
And final thing for you as we're here recording this on, again, December 20th, as we're 8 weeks from opening day. I mean, during the off season, you obviously, really, as soon as the season was over, you had Jim Schlossnagle leaving Texas A&M for Texas. Obviously, you had the unbelievable run that Tennessee had a year ago and just continuing to dominate under Tony Vitello. What are some storylines that you have on your radar going into 2025?
Yeah, it's once again, it's kind of, can anyone stop the SEC? I mean, last year was a great year for the ACC. It had 4 teams in Omaha, just like the SEC did. But then at the end of the day, it was 2 SEC teams left standing, and another SEC champion. And it just feels like that's the way it's been going for a while now, as the SEC has just separated itself from everybody else. And now you're adding Texas and Oklahoma in that mix. And, that league looks loaded as ever. And so, Tennessee, can they keep it rolling now? It's this incredible 4-year run for them under Tony Vitello, for a program that hadn't even been to a regional, since 2005 before Tony got there. And they finally got back, I think, in 2019. And that was quite a drought, and now they're one of the best programs in the country. I mean, we did our most recent program rankings, and they were number 2 behind LSU. LSU is loaded again. I mean, can they get back to the top this year? So a lot of storylines in the SEC. Certainly the ACC, I think, is loaded this year as well. Virginia, Florida State both feel like top 5 caliber teams. You got North Carolina in that mix, NC State, Wake Forest, all look good again. Clemson as well. So it's kind of a big jumble of teams at the top half of that league. Duke, this state is just loaded for baseball right now. I mean, it's all 4 of those ACC teams plus East Carolina. That's an impressive collection of programs right now that are all, feels like, trending in the right direction.
Yeah, Pirate fans, understandably, keep a close watch on that Clemson program with Eric Bakich and Nick Schnabel, and the success they've had their first couple years there at a tradition-rich program in Clemson. But Aaron, appreciate the time this afternoon. Tell folks how they can subscribe to D1 Baseball and find all your work on social media.
Yeah, check us out at d1baseball.com. We are wrapping up our fall coverage. We've got fall reports up right now on almost 100 programs. We're going to get well over 100 between now and New Year's Eve. We got a bunch more coming over the next week and a half. And then we roll right into our season preview coverage, breaking down all the leagues. We're going to have tons of lists, prospect lists and rankings and podcasts and everything you need to follow the college game. Check us out at d1baseball.com.
Again, Aaron, really appreciate the time, and we look forward to catching up with you during the season.
My pleasure, Bubba.
Thanks so much. Pirate Nation, that is Aaron Fitt. We appreciate him joining the program and definitely wish him and the guys there at D1 Baseball, Mike Rooney, Kendall Rogers and company, continued success. They do just a tremendous job covering the game that we love. But, a few more notes here before we wrap up this 7th edition of Jungle Tales and get out of here. ECU Baseball has its own NIL collective. It's through Team Boneyard, but the 23 Club, 23club.org is where you can make a donation to support ECU Baseball and its NIL. Like Cliff Godwin, tells players when they're being recruited that, if you're looking to get rich, East Carolina is not for you, but the 23 Club, again, 23club.org, it helps cover the cost. And, instead of having 11.7 scholarships, that number, as we mentioned, is going to be changing anyway. But until then, it will allow ECU to make up that gap and really do everything it can to remain among college baseball's top programs. And so one of the things the 23 Club is doing here in the coming days, on Monday afternoon, ECU is partnering to produce a special Maker's Mark bottle. It's called Diamond Bucks 23. And as you see, the The first 230 bottles will be autographed by Cliff Godwin and also Alec Burleson. Coach Godwin and Burley, took the time to autograph each of those bottles over the last few days. And there you see local businesses that are joining the 23 club and really supporting the ECU baseball program, like Tiebreakers, Sup Dogs, Wayne Roofing and Sheet Metal, Sup Crush Vodka, Emporium. And I know there are other businesses that will be jumping on board to get behind ECU baseball and the 23 club. So make sure you get out. We'll have that on our social media. Again, you can follow us on X as well as Instagram at Jungle Tales Pod, and we'll have that on each of those platforms as well as Facebook, to remind you exactly when that is on Monday afternoon. There's about a 2 or 3 hour window where Burley and Coach Godwin will be there, and, to interact with fans, take pictures, and that sort of thing, as you can get your commemorative bottle of Maker's Mark. Also, here in the last few days, we had the 2025 schedule finally released. There had been a long wait, some hold up there with Army and their, what ended up being deletion, from the Keith LeClaire Classic. Unfortunately, they were forced to play a game with Air Force. Rumor has it where they were no longer able to participate in the Keith LeClaire Classic, which was unfortunate. That's a program that's in the NCAA tournament year in, year out. And as you recall, they were in that Charlottesville regional when ECU was there just a couple years ago with Oklahoma. But as you take a look at it, the Pirates will open with a 3-game series against George Mason, which is Jeff Palumbo's alma mater, the longtime assistant, the only ECU assistant that has been with Cliff Godwin from the get-go, going back to the summer of 2014. Then you have Game 4. Who else would Game 4 be against? It's going to be at Campbell. And then you have the traveling series with the North Carolina Tar Heels, Game 1, Friday night at Clark LeClaire Stadium. What an atmosphere that will be. And then excellent atmospheres are certainly to ensue the following 2 days at the Durham Bulls Athletic Park. And last year, of course, that game was in Fayetteville at Segra Stadium. And then the series finale will be at Boshamer Stadium on Sunday afternoon. You have midweek games with Old Dominion, the 2 games in the Keith LeClaire Classic this year since Army could not participate. You have Indiana State, a program that's been a tournament team over the last few years. Again, their head coach, Mitch Hanna's moved on to South Florida, but nonetheless, a quality program, a program that will certainly, be or could very well be a quality RPI game for ECU. Virginia Tech out of the ACC. You have a unique game there. The Pirates will be going back to the DBAP to play Gardner-Webb. It's the first time that I recall East Carolina playing Gardner-Webb in an awfully long time. You have a 3-game series at Clark LeClaire against Coastal Carolina. And this is one that Pirate fans have wanted for a long time. Coach Godwin had been asked about it, as well as Gary Gilmore at Coastal. And now, the first year following Coach Gilmore's retirement, the programs were able to make it happen. ECU will be traveling to Conway to the Chanticleer's beautiful ballpark next year. And I know a lot of Pirate fans will make that trip. You have ECU. Last year, of course, you had the weather that unfortunately, played havoc or wreaked havoc, I should say, with that series, a 2-game midweek series with the VCU Rams. ECU will be returning that series to the Diamond, where they will play VCU twice on March 11th and 12th. You have a 3-game series with William and Mary. And then, of course, you have the usual suspects, UNC Wilmington, NC State. You have Duke. The Pirates will begin league play with the home series against the Memphis Tigers. And then one of the things that really jumped out to me as we take a look once again here at the AAC standings, the preseason.